What does the Bible say about dressing modestly? The Bible is very clear that the one who lusts, as well as the one who causes lust, is in danger of losing their soul. So dressing and acting modestly is very important. The only question is, what is modest? In biblical times, typically warnings regarding modesty were warnings against showiness, calling too much attention to yourself by being overly dressed. While that is an important aspect of modesty, in today's society, we have the opposite problem, people drawing attention to themselves for wearing too little. That said, there are some interesting biblical principles that can be found about not being dressed enough as well. Genesis chapter 3. When Adam and Eve found out that they were naked, they made themselves garments. But that wasn't good enough. The Bible says God made for them tunics, kethoneth, to wear instead. Lexicographers describe these as long shirt-like garments, generally with sleeves, coming down to the knees and rarely to the ankles. That gives us a good general idea of what God expects, but we might be cautious about leaning too heavily on lexicographers' definition as our standard. At minimum, though, we can learn these two important principles. Number one, you don't have to be completely naked to be inadequately dressed in God's eyes. Adam and Eve had some clothing on, but it still wasn't enough. And number two, God dressed them the same. Apparently, a different standard doesn't apply to women than applies to men. While there isn't any passage that specifically says this is how long your shorts or dress should be, we do have some important principles to consider. In 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Paul warns about unnecessarily offending people we are trying to reach. In other words, if our sinful society even recognizes something as immodest, then it's safe to say that we should at least avoid wearing those things. Surely we can do better than the world, and indeed, we're called to do just that. Romans chapter 12. If you ever go and try to visit someone in prison, you'll find that they have rather interesting dress codes. The dress requirements for some of the most liberal areas in the country, Las Vegas and California, they require all visitors to dress, quote, conservatively and modestly. Well, what do they list as conservative and modest? No bare midriff, sheer or transparent clothing. No low-cut blouses, dresses, or plunging necklines in the back or front of any garment. No sleeveless tops, muscle shirts, halter tops, tank tops, tops or dresses with spaghetti straps. Sleeves must extend 2 inches over the shoulder or covered by an article of clothing, such as a sweater, that shall not be removed. No miniskirts, no mini dresses, no pants that do not cover the knees. No skirts or dresses that have slits above the knees. No sweatpants. No spandex-type pants when worn as outer garments. No tight or form-fitting clothing. No inappropriate language on clothes. No swimsuits. Jewelry is allowed in modest amounts. Dresses, skirts, and capri pants are allowed, but they must cover the entire knee while sitting and standing. The sinful, worldly government recognizes that these rules are conservative and modest. Who among us is willing to argue that our standards as Christians should be lower than the world's? It's okay if we want to be more modest than what society expects, but how can any of us in good conscience be less modest? But someone might say, I don't have any control over what other people think. Well, that's not exactly true. I could tell you not to think about a tiny pink elephant playing soccer. Whatever you do, don't think of this tiny pink elephant playing soccer. See, this is what you're not supposed to be thinking about. Can I control what you think about? Technically, no. But I sure can make it easy for you to think about certain things. If I said, it's not my fault you're thinking about a tiny pink elephant playing soccer, you wouldn't really believe me, would you? You're not thinking about that because you just love thinking about things that you're not supposed to. You're doing it because it was placed in front of you. Matthew chapter 18. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, and that phrase, causes to sin, literally means to place something in front of someone so that they fall. It would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. But woe to the one by whom the temptation comes. We need to realize that God created us to be attractive to one another, and we will be held responsible for making others stumble. You may not feel like you're the most attractive thing around, so modesty doesn't apply to you, but it does. Also remember that others may look at you and decide to follow your example. We have a great deal of control over what other people think, and we need to take responsibility for our own actions. Am I being consistent or hypocritical? As Christians, we are warned against being hypocritical or having different standards depending on the person or the situation. Granted, what is appropriate when you are at home by yourself or with your spouse is one thing. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what is modest to wear while in public. Does God's standard of modesty change depending on how close I am to water or if I'm on a sports team? Do we wear things to the beach on vacation or elsewhere in public that we would be embarrassed to wear amongst brethren? What if the preacher wore to preach in what some of us wear to the beach? Let's look at ourselves. Are we being consistent? Dads, if you can wear no shirt to the beach, why can't your wife or your daughters? We need to think long and hard about what we wear or don't wear in public and what message we're sending. Are we being hypocrites? How can we help someone that we know to be more modest? Number one, we can realize what impact we have on others. Ladies and gentlemen, God created us to be attractive to one another, and we will be held responsible for making others stumble, either personally or by our own example. Number two, we can make it more difficult to do. If your sports team uniform requires modesty and the coach won't budge, quit the team. You can go to heaven without being on the swim team or cheerleading team. Throw out the things that are too small or too revealing. You can't be tempted to wear it if you don't have it. Don't go shopping with worldly people. Go shopping with a sound Christian who won't be afraid to tell you when that thing you love and is on sale is too short. Is it difficult to find modest clothing these days? Yes, absolutely. Is it impossible? No. Lots of people struggle with being able to find appropriate clothing, but it is possible. And number three, have accountability. Let your brothers and sisters know that you want their honest feedback on what you're wearing. Check yourself before you leave the house in the morning. Don't let yourself off the hook with excuses. Being at the beach or the temperature outside are no reasons to lower our standards of modesty. Let's be people who are genuine, not hypocritical in any way, above reproach. Romans chapter 12 and verse 2 again. Do not be conformed or fashioned according to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. If you have any questions about this lesson, please reach out to us at the Gospel Broadcasting Network. Thanks for watching.